Jeju Island, Korea. Located roughly about 90 kilometers off South Korea's southern tip, Jeju Island is known for its beach resorts, honeymooners, and quirky museums. Drawn to its subtropical climate and spectacular hikes, thousands of tourists visit the volcanic island every year. Beneath the island's glittering blue water and green hills, however, Jeju has its own share of paranormal activities in and around the region. From sightings of apparitions to the infamous water spirit, here are some of the chilling facts about Jeju Island. One of the most brutal episodes in Jeju's history was very recent, just before the outbreak of the Korean War, which began in 1950. In the years 1948 and 1949, the Korean government was concerned about a communist insurgency on the island. They sent troops to deal with the issue, and in the ensuing conflict between 40,000 and 30,000 people were killed, including women and children. Whole villages were massacred by government forces, and leftists were tortured for information. Many of Jeju's caves, Halison Mountain, and other hiking spots became a refuge and also often a place of death for the island's former inhabitants. Even Jeju International Airport has scars from the tragedy. Just beside the airport's main runway, a mass grave was found that contained about 388 bodies. Ghost sightings of the Jeju uprising's victims are therefore common in these regions. Korea's Molguishin, meaning water ghost, are the spirits of those who have drowned by misadventure or suicide. As Jeju Island is surrounded by deep water and having a fishing economy, has suffered many drownings. These are some of the scariest ghosts on the island. Out of the water, Molguishin can be recognized by their pale skin and constantly wet clothes. They're most often glimpsed in the water. However, when they use their unnaturally long arms to catch hold of the unwary and drag them to a watery grave, the locals often warn tourists and visitors not to get too close to Jeju's sea on a dark night, lest you find yourself with a deathly pale hand wrapped around your ankle and dragging beneath the endless waves. Distressingly enough, Molguishin can be found in any body of water, including bathtubs. Mauplang Sacred Groves, India. Located in the northeastern part of India, the Mauplang Sacred Groves originated in the state of Meghalaya since time immemorial, much before the advent of Christianity. These groves are the tracts of virgin forest that are left untouched and are protected by the local people due to its cultural and religious significance. It is adored and feared alike by local folks due to its mysterious properties and supernatural happenings over the years. They were laid down and nurtured by the forefathers of the tribes that populate the region today. Legends and lores about the forests are so old that they have no written records, yet they have been passed down orally throughout many generations. The local tribal people believe that Ubasa, or goddess, dwell among these thick and virgin forests. Various rites and rituals are performed periodically in these forests, according to their belief that pleasing Ubasa through sacrifice of animals such as pig, goat, cow, buffalo, and fowl, together with performing dances. The Basa will protect their villages or clans from famine and other sufferings or bad omens and keep the evil spirits away. The indigenous tribe of this region will not dare to break the rule laid down by nature to maintain the sanctity of these sacred groves, for it is well understood that an untoward step could lead to dire consequences. Their rule being, you cannot take anything out of this forest, else the deity gets upset. Removing even the tiniest thing from the forest means you are disrespecting the deity. It is said that whoever attempts to break this rule is punished with illness, which can even lead to death. In fact, according to a local lore, during the 70s, the Indian army tried taking out the dead wood and trees from this forest, despite repeated warnings from the locals. Eventually, the army vehicles were immobilized as the engines failed to start, even after multiple attempts, forcing the army to give up the resources that they had gathered, following which the engine was miraculously fixed. Since then, the legend took on a very strong base, as nobody even dared to ignore the same after witnessing it firsthand. Hoya Baku Forest, Romania. The Hoya Baku Forest, located on the outskirts of Cluj-Napoca, on the northern border of Romania. It spans across 250 acres of Transylvania and is considered one of the most haunted places on the planet because of strange paranormal phenomena that is consistently reported. Warped trees fill this forest, their skeletal figures twisting and spiraling, making it seem as though they are contorting themselves to reach out and touch you. An eerie silence fills the air, interrupted only by the footsteps of unseen figures. Given its eerie atmosphere, it's no wonder that the Hoya Baku Forest is said to be one of the most haunted forests in the world. As such, it's a place that lends well to stories steeped with darkness. Some even call it the Bermuda Triangle of Romania. The forest gained notoriety around the 1960s, when biologist Alexandru Sift photographed a flying object in the sky above the forest. After this incident, other inexplicable events soon followed. According to local legends, ghosts and spirits lurk among the crooked trees. One tale tells of a young girl who disappeared into the forest, only to reappear 5 years later, unable to remember where she had been. Another legend speaks of the disappearance of a shepherd and his flock of 200 sheep in the woods, which were never found again. And with most places associated with the supernatural, there are also rumors of alien encounters. Most of the paranormal activity seems to be concentrated in a particular part of the forest, which is free of vegetation and formed into a perfect circle. The soil of this vegetation-free area has been tested, and no anomalies were found that would prevent the growth of any plant life. Visitors often report intense feelings of anxiety and feeling of being watched constantly. The forest website warns, and the locals tend to stay away because they fear that if they enter, they will never be able to find their way out. Himeji Castle, Japan. Japan has hundreds of ghost stories, known as kaiden. One of the well-known kaiden, called Bancho Sarayashiki. Its English title is Okiku and the Plates. There are many versions of it throughout Japan. It is often performed as kabuki, which is a traditional style of Japanese theater. There are many different variations of Bancho Sarayashiki, but the most popular one is based on the grounds of Himeji Castle. In the era of the shogunate, a samurai, Aoyama Tetsuzan, the regent of Lord Norimoto, the true ruler of the castle, had taken a liking to a beautiful servant named Okiku. She repeatedly refused his advances, which frustrated the samurai. He devised a plot and hid one of his 10 precious heirloom plates, and then blamed its disappearance on the maid. Even though the poor servant frantically recounted the plates over and over again, the 10th was nowhere to be found. The samurai then offered to pardon her, but only if she agreed to be his lover. Once again, she refused, and the samurai threw her down a well in his rage. It is said that Okiku became an onryo, or a vengeful spirit, and rose from the well every night. She'd count from 1 to 9 before letting out an unearthly scream, much like a banshee, to mourn over the 10th plate that she never found. There are different versions of the ghost story of Okiku. What they all have in common is the description of her ghost coming out of the well and counting from 1 to 9, and then breaking into a heart-rending sobbing. In one version, Okiku breaks a plate and is killed by her master, and her corpse is thrown into the well. In yet another version, it is the wife of Oyama who breaks the plate. To hide her guilt, she throws the broken plate into the well and accuses Okiku of having it stolen. In this version, she is also killed by her master for punishment and thrown into the well. There is also an alternate version for the end of the story. To stop the nightly sobbing, a friend of the family of Oyama is hired. He is hiding at the well during the night, and after Okiku had counted from 1 to 9, he is stepping forward, shouting loudly, 10. From then on, the ghost of Okiku was never seen again. Okiku's well on Himeji Castle is in competition with another location of the well, The Garden of Canadian Embassy in Tokyo, established on land bought from the Oyama family. There are at least as many locations of the well of the poor girl as there are different versions of her story. As for the well in Himeji Castle, once the sun began to set and the shadows lengthened, people started avoiding it. Strange sounds like whispers could be heard from within, and glimpses of the ethereal figure of a woman. For the few who dared to venture into the well in the darkest hours of the night, if they listened carefully, they would realize that the whispering voice coming from the well was counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then it would repeat, only to 9, never 10, one missing plate, one restless spirit, eternally searching for it, counting every night, never leaving her watery grave.